Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Zeal Ardor, Greif, out August 23rd on Redacted. The album has 14 tracks, 42 minutes in length, and this is the band's fourth full-length studio record. They are a Swiss avant-garde metal band. From a design standpoint, this album is a roller coaster ride from the first to the last track. A lot of ebbs and flows, very fluid, very dynamic, very engaging, but perhaps most important, very entertaining. It's an album design that enhances the qualities of the songs and minimizes the differences that they have, and it brings forward a little bit more of the commonalities, allowing this diverse and dynamic record at the end of the day to feel a little bit more cohesive and a little bit more balanced, which brings quality to the forefront, and it brings forward that sort of engagement and entertainment that you're looking forward from an overall album experience. As far as the sound is concerned, I mentioned this album being diverse, and is diverse because of the sound experience and the soundscape that it carries. There's a lot of different influences as we've gotten used to when it comes to Zeal Ardor, and this record is no different. The differences with this record start off with how the album came together. This is the first time that Zeal Ardor puts together a record where the whole band works towards the album. The whole band is part of the creative process. And I actually feel like this helped the album with its uniquenesses, but it also helped the album in terms of trying to create some better bridges between the songs. Finding a balance between those two worlds makes this record unique from that standpoint. The other aspect that I felt that it was different with this album is that this is an overall heavier sounding record. This doesn't mean that every song is going to be heavy, that every song is going to have heavy drums or heavy guitars, but the overall experience of this album is one that uses a lot more of the heavier side of their sound, and it's an album that is not as dark as some of its predecessors. So these are all differences and uniquenesses that this album offers to the listener, while still having that overall background diversity that the band has always put forward with every single record. Now, this is not one of those records that it's easy to pick drums, guitars, bass out of the overall soundscape and highlight the impact that those elements have. Because I felt like sound-wise, this album, it has its strength in the overall collective. It's about how all of them work with one another. For example, the electronic side of this album is very powerful. It has a very important role throughout the duration of this record, but it's not necessarily the driving force of the album. But neither are the guitars per se, neither are the drums, but rather the combination of these elements together that create that sense of heaviness, that create that sense of diversity, that create all the different ebbs and flows. So it's one of those records where you see the uniquenesses and you see the impact of the individual elements within the soundscape, but you honestly find that the greatest quality that the album has is how they all work with one another, and the production behind this album really enhances that work and the quality of the individual parts. This is a very well produced album. It needs to be, in order for you to get the most out of the sound, in order for you to get the most out of the essence of the album. It's also an album that's very rich, that is very textured, and when you start to create an album with those sort of parameters, the production plays a very important role in order for nothing to get lost, in order for the listener to be able to appreciate all the different details and better see and feel and listen to the shapes of the songs. And this record offers all of that. Now, once it comes into the vocals, the album is as dynamic, as diverse vocally as it is musically. A lot of harsh vocals sprinkled in throughout this record. Maybe a lot is a little bit of a stretch, but a lot more than I was expecting coming in. And a lot of layers to the vocal performance, a lot of backing vocals. It's an album that has different layers and different approaches and different processes as far as the vocal performance is concerned. But I think where you can find the common ground is that vocally it's very emotionally driven, it's very emotionally focused. Because of that, it has a sense of warmth with it, a lot warmer than it is colder, and that's why I feel like this album focus itself on the heavier side of the band's sound, and it lets go a little bit of the darkness that we've seen from some of the previous records. And you see that not just in the sound, but like I said, you also see that from a vocal standpoint, which allows this album to go in a quite different direction as far as that aspect is concerned. And when you put all of these pieces together, what do you have? You have another great album by Zeal Ardor. I honestly feel like this is one of those bands that cannot put together a record that is now worth listening to. Every album brings something new to the table. Every album offers a different side of what the band is all about. But this one, bringing the whole band into the creative process, it felt to me that it changed quite a bit of the dynamics of the band without necessarily completely disconnecting from the past. It's still Zeal Ardor, it's still an album that pushes the envelope, it's still an album that brings a lot of new elements to the table, but it's also an album that from a creative standpoint feels a lot more multi-directional and not necessarily as streamlined. Now, as far as favorite songs go, I want to start off with Go Home My Friend. I love this track because it has that gospel feel to it. The vocals are haunting, very emotionally driven song, also because of that gospel backdrop. I feel like it's a track that creates a lot of depth with a vocal performance. It's a song that also then moves in with a little bit more of a heavier guitar, heavier drums, electronic elements adding into it to create more texture, to bring almost a modern soundscape as the backdrop to what seems to be a more gospel vocal leading song in the forefront, becoming almost a hybrid, creating a very unique style and a very unique track with the way the sound and vocals work with one another. Next we have Thrill, great guitar sound, a modern touch to that guitar sound with a little bit of a heavier bite. The drums also give some size to this song, definitely make not just the track feel heavier at times, but also feel a little bit bigger. The vocals feel a lot cleaner, almost a pop style vocal approach, if you will. But with that sound in the backdrop, you start to create some interesting dynamics, making the song have a certain style of movement that you don't necessarily, in a certain style of heaviness that you don't necessarily associate with this type of vocal approach. But the two work really well together. They really fill in the gaps for one another, making the track textured, layered, but very compact at the exact same time. And I enjoyed tremendously the electronic sound that fits behind all of it, that kind of fills in all the gaps and makes this song feel very complete. Last but definitely not least, Sugarcoat. This is a more vocally driven track. I feel like this is a song where the vocals jump off the track, they jump into the forefront and off the track. The heavier sound adds some thickness and some presence to the way the song comes about. It's a track that finds ways of exploding musically and even vocally as well. There are some heavy grunts here and there, really sporadic, spread out throughout the track, but overall it's a more groovier song. It has groove in the sound and in the vocal approach. It has a very impressive guitar sound, very impressive drum sound. It's a song that has some size, but also some grooviness to it. This is it. Zeal Ardor with Greif, out August 23rd on Redacted. Hit me up in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the album, on the singles. I look forward to hearing from you, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.